Tae-ho Kim stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his formal diplomatic uniform for the 5th time. His hands were shaking slightly, and he could feel sweat forming on his palms. Today was the day humanity would meet the Valorians for the first time, and somehow he was part of the team that would make it happen. The space station called Horizon's Gate floated between Earth's territory and Valorian space. It was neutral ground, built specifically for this meeting. Tae-ho was just a junior translator and cultural liaison, but he had spent months studying the limited information Earth had about the Valorian Empire. They were powerful, ancient, and controlled a massive portion of the galaxy. Nobody knew much about them because they rarely spoke to younger species. His colleague, Hannah Park, knocked on his door and entered without waiting. She looked nervous too, her eyes darting around as she clutched her data pad. "Are you ready?" she asked. The Valorian ships just docked. Ambassador Choi wants everyone in the main hall in 10 minutes. Tae-ho nodded and followed her through the gleaming corridors of the station. Other members of Earth's delegation rushed past them, all looking equally anxious. This wasn't just a diplomatic meeting. This was humanity's chance to join the larger galactic community. If things went wrong, Earth might remain isolated for centuries. The main hall was enormous, designed to host gatherings of multiple species. When Tae-ho entered, he saw the Valorian delegation for the first time. They were tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to shimmer with a faint blue light. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, and they moved with a grace that made them seem like they were floating rather than walking. At the center of their group stood Queen Lyri Valantis herself. She was breathtaking in a way that had nothing to do with her alien features. She wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight, and her presence commanded the entire room. Even the experienced human diplomats seemed to shrink a little when she looked their way. Ambassador Choi stepped forward and began the formal greetings. Everything was going according to plan. The translator devices worked perfectly, converting speech between the two languages. The Valorians seemed interested but distant, observing humanity with the same curiosity someone might show when examining an unusual insect. After the formal speeches, there was a ceremonial banquet. Tae-ho found himself seated relatively close to the Valorian delegation, though not at the main table. He watched as dishes from both cultures were served. The Valorians ate slowly and carefully, examining each human food item with scientific interest. Hannah leaned over and whispered to him, "Remember what I told you about the crystal flowers? If you get a chance to present one to any of their officials, it's supposed to be a sign of respect and goodwill. The database says it's appropriate for formal occasions." Tae-ho nodded. He had prepared for this. In his pocket, he carried a small crystalline flower that had been grown in Earth's labs specifically for this purpose. It glittered with an inner light, mimicking the natural crystal flowers that grew on certain planets in Valorian space. As the banquet continued, Ambassador Choi subtly gestured for Tae-ho to approach. "This is your moment," the ambassador whispered. "Present your gift to the queen. Show her that we've done our research on their culture." Tae-ho's heart hammered in his chest as he stood and walked toward the Valorian table. The queen watched his approach with those large, unreadable eyes. Her advisor, Commander Cyrey, tensed slightly, but Lyri raised a hand in a calming gesture. Tae-ho bowed in the Valorian style, as he had practiced. Then he reached into his pocket and withdrew the crystal flower. It caught the light beautifully, sparkling in his palm. He had memorized the phrase from the cultural database, the one that was supposed to accompany such a gift. Taking a deep breath, he spoke in carefully practiced Valorian. "With this token of beauty eternal, I bind my fate to yours, so that our paths may never separate, and our futures become one." He extended the flower toward the queen. The entire room fell silent. Every Valorian in the hall froze. Commander Cyray's eyes went wide with shock. Several of the Valorian officials gasped audibly. On the human side, Ambassador Choi looked confused, uncertain why the atmosphere had suddenly changed so dramatically. Queen Lyrie stared at Tae-ho for a long moment. Her expression was impossible to read. Then, slowly, she reached out and took the crystal flower from his hand. She held it up to the light, examining it closely, before looking back at Tae-ho with something that might have been amusement in her eyes. "I accept," she said simply. The Valorian delegation erupted into whispered conversations. Commander Cyray stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Your Majesty, surely you cannot be serious. This human clearly does not understand what he has done." "He performed the ritual correctly," Lyrie said calmly. "The words were spoken. The gift was offered. I have accepted. By our oldest laws, the bond is legitimate." Ambassador Choi rushed forward, his face pale. "Your Majesty, please. I'm certain there has been some misunderstanding. What exactly has happened here?" Commander Cyray turned to face the human delegation, her expression stern. "Your representative has just performed the ancient Valorian bonding ritual. In your terms, he has proposed marriage to our queen, and she has accepted." The words hit Tai-ho like a physical blow. His knees felt weak. Marriage? He had just been trying to show respect. How could a simple gift have turned into a proposal? He looked desperately at Hana, who was frantically scrolling through her datapad, her face growing increasingly horrified as she found the correct entry in the cultural database. "The ritual was incomplete in our files," she stammered. "We only had fragments. We didn't know." "Ignorance does not invalidate the bond," Commander Cyray said firmly. "By Valorian law, these two are now betrothed. The human must accompany us to Valora Prime to complete the bonding ceremony. If he refuses, it will be seen as a grave insult to our queen and our entire empire." Ambassador Choi tried to negotiate, his words tumbling out rapidly. "Surely we can find some solution. The mistake was honest. Perhaps we could." "War," Commander Cyray interrupted. "Refusal of a legitimate bonding is grounds for war under our most ancient laws. Your species would be declaring itself an enemy of the Valorian Empire." Tae-ho felt the weight of billions of lives suddenly resting on his shoulders. If he refused, Earth would face a war it could never win. The Valorian Empire had the power to destroy human civilization completely, all because he had tried to give a gift. Queen Lyrie stood, still holding the crystal flower. She approached Tae-ho directly, studying his face with those large, luminous eyes. "You are afraid," she observed. "That is understandable. But the bond is made. You will come with me to Valora Prime. We will complete what you have started." It wasn't a question or a request. It was a simple statement of fact. Tae-ho found his voice, though it came out smaller than he intended. I will come. I won't let Earth suffer for my mistake." Lyrie's expression softened slightly, though whether it was respect or pity, Tae-ho couldn't tell. "Perhaps it was not a mistake," she said quietly, so only he could hear. "Perhaps it was fate." Within the hour, Tae-ho was packing his belongings. His sister Myrae, who worked as a xenobiologist in the delegation, came to his quarters. She hugged him tightly, tears in her eyes. "I can't believe this is happening. We'll find a way to fix it. We have to." But Tae-ho knew there was no fixing it. He had made the bond, and now he had to see it through. As he walked toward the docking bay where the Valorian flagship waited, he took one last look back at the human section of the station. Everything familiar was being left behind. The Valorian ship, called the Eternal Bloom, was unlike anything humans had ever built. It seemed organic somehow, all flowing curves and soft lights. As Tae-ho stepped aboard, he felt like he was entering another world entirely. Queen Lyrie stood at the entrance, waiting for him. "Welcome aboard, Tai-Ho Kim," she said. "Your new life begins now." The airlock sealed behind him with a soft hiss, cutting him off from everything he had ever known. Somewhere ahead lay Velora Prime, a wedding ceremony, and a future he had never imagined. All because of one terrible, perfect mistake. The quarters they gave Tai-Ho on the Eternal Bloom were far too luxurious for someone who had accidentally proposed to an alien queen. The room was 3 times larger than his apartment back on Earth, with walls that seemed to shift between different shades of blue and purple. A massive window showed the stars streaming past as the ship traveled faster than light. Heading deeper into Valorian space, Tai-Ho sat on the edge of the bed, which adjusted itself automatically to his body shape, and tried not to panic. A soft chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. When he opened it, he found a young Valorian standing there. Unlike the imposing officials he had met before, this one seemed friendly, almost eager. "Hello," the Valorian said in accented but clear English. "My name is Theen. I have been assigned as your personal aide during your journey. If you need anything, you must tell me." Tai-Ho managed a weak smile. "Thank you, Theen. I'm still trying to understand what's happening." Theen entered the room and looked around, making small adjustments to the lighting and temperature controls. "You are betrothed to our queen. This is a great honor, Eve. And if you did not intend it, the whole empire is talking about it." "I imagine they are," Tai-Ho said bitterly. "The primitive human who accidentally proposed to their ruler." "Some say that," Theen admitted. "But others think it is interesting. Humans are different. Everyone wants to know more about your species." Over the next few days, Tai-Ho learned to navigate life aboard the ship. Theen helped him understand basic Valorian customs and warned him about the complex social rules that governed everything. The most important lesson was about Valorian telepathy. "We cannot read thoughts," Theen explained, "but we can sense emotions very clearly. When you feel afraid or angry or happy, we know it. This is why lying is very difficult among my people. We always know how someone truly feels." That information made Tai-Ho deeply uncomfortable. It meant that every moment of fear and confusion he experienced was visible to everyone around him. There was no way to hide his feelings, no way to pretend everything was fine. The ship's crew treated him with formal respect, but Tai-Ho could sense the distance. Most Valorians seemed uncertain how to interact with him. Some were curious, others were dismissive, and a few seemed openly hostile. The worst was Vice Admiral Kell, the Queen's second-in-command. Kell made no effort to hide his contempt for humans. "Your species has barely left your own star system," Kell said coldly when they were introduced. "You have no business binding yourself to our queen. This union demeans her." Tai-Ho had no good response to that. Everything Kell said was true from a certain perspective. Humans were newcomers to space, while the Valorians had explored the galaxy for thousands of years. 5 days into the journey, Queen Lyrie summoned Tai-Ho to her private dining chamber. It was the first time they had been alone together since leaving the station. Tai-Ho entered nervously, unsure what to expect. Lyrie sat at a table designed for 2, with food from both their cultures laid out carefully. She gestured for him to sit. "I thought we should talk properly," she said, "without all the officials and ceremonies." Tai-Ho sat down cautiously. Up close, Lyrie was even more striking than she had been in the crowded hall. But there was also something tired in her eyes, something that seemed too heavy for someone who should have everything. "I need to know something," Tai-Ho said, finding his courage. "Did you really accept my proposal because of some law? Or is there another reason?" Lyrie smiled slightly. "You are direct. I appreciate that." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "The bonding ritual is real, and the laws are real. But you are correct that I could have found a way to refuse if I truly wanted to. I chose to accept." Taeho asked. What could you possibly gain from binding yourself to a human who knows nothing about your world? An outsider, Lyrie said simply. For the past year, there have been 3 attempts on my life. Someone within my own court, someone I trust, is trying to kill me. I have investigated quietly, but I cannot find who is responsible. Everyone around me is Valorian, with centuries of political connections and loyalty to their houses before their loyalty to me. The revelation shocked Taeho. You're in danger? Constant danger, Lyrie confirmed. I needed someone who was outside all of that. Someone who had no ties to the noble houses, no hidden agendas, no political debts. When you accidentally performed the bonding ritual, I saw an opportunity. But I don't know anything about court politics or investigations, Taeho protested. How could I possibly help you? Lyrie leaned forward, her eyes intense. Humans have a reputation in the galaxy. You are the only species to have nearly destroyed your own homeworld and then recovered. You survived climate catastrophe, wars, and self-inflicted disasters. Other species look at humanity and see chaos, but I see adaptation. I see a species that solves impossible problems. You think I can solve your impossible problem? Taeho said slowly, understanding dawning. I think you will see things that no Valorian would see. You will ask questions we would not ask. And you are unpredictable in ways that might protect us both. Lyrie reached across the table and placed her hand over his. Her skin was cool to the touch, but not unpleasant. This started as politics, yes, but I hope that in time we can become true partners. Before Taeho could respond, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms began blaring throughout the vessel. Lyrie stood immediately, her casual demeanor replaced by royal authority. Report, she commanded, activating a communication panel. Explosion in the engineering section, came the panicked reply. We have hull breaches on 3 decks. Life support is failing in sectors 9 through 12. Accident or sabotage? Lyrie demanded. Unknown, Your Majesty. Lyrie looked at Taeho. Come with me. This may be another attempt. They ran through the corridors together, with guards falling in around them. When they reached the engineering section, it was chaos. Smoke filled the air, and crew members were frantically trying to seal the breaches. The chief engineer was shouting orders, but the situation looked desperate. Taeho pushed forward, his mind racing. He had studied engineering in university before switching to linguistics and cultural studies. The Valorian systems were far more advanced than human technology, but the basic principles were the same. Pressure, atmosphere, structural integrity. What are you doing? Kel demanded, grabbing Taeho's arm. You have no business being here. Let him go, Lyrie commanded. Taeho examined the damaged section. The Valorian engineers were trying to use their advanced repair systems, but the explosion had damaged those systems too. They needed something simpler, more direct. He spotted some emergency supplies and had an idea. Do you have manual sealant? He asked the chief engineer. Not the automated kind, the emergency backup? The engineer looked confused, but nodded. Yes, but it is too slow. We need the automated systems. The automated systems are damaged, Taeho said. Get me the manual sealant, some support beams, and whatever you use for temporary atmosphere shields. Working quickly. Taeho showed them a technique human engineers had developed during the early days of space exploration, when automated systems weren't reliable. It was crude and required physical labor, but it worked. He guided the Valorian crew through the process, adapting human methods to Valorian materials. Within 20 minutes, the immediate danger had passed. The breaches were sealed, and life support was stable. The Valorian engineers stared at the repairs with a mixture of confusion and grudging respect. It is not elegant, the chief engineer admitted, but it is effective. Kel said nothing, but Tae-ho could see the calculation in his eyes. The Vice Admiral was reassessing him, seeing him as something more than a primitive outsider. Lyrie approached Tae-ho, her expression warm. "You see? Already you have proven your value. A Valorian engineer would never have thought of such a simple solution. We would have kept trying to fix the advanced systems. Was it sabotage?" Tae-ho asked quietly. "We will investigate," Lyrie said. "But I believe so. Someone wanted to kill me, and they do not care how many crew members die in the process." That night, Tae-ho lay in his luxurious quarters, unable to sleep. He kept thinking about what Lyrie had said. She needed him not because he was skilled or powerful, but because he was different. Because he would approach problems in ways Valorians never would. The door chimed again. Tae-ho opened it to find Theen standing there, looking nervous. "I wanted to thank you," the young Valorian said. "My brother works in the engineering section. You saved his life today." "I just did what anyone would do," Tae-ho replied. "No," Theen said firmly. "No Valorian would have thought of your solution. We are taught that our technology is superior, that the old ways are obsolete. But you showed us that sometimes the simple answer is the best answer." After Theen left, Tae-ho sat by the window and watched the stars. He was beginning to understand his role in this strange situation. He wasn't just a political tool or an accident of fate. He was a bridge between two very different ways of thinking. And if he was going to survive the court intrigue waiting for him on Valora Prime, he would need to think like a human, not try to imitate the Valorians. The ship continued its journey, carrying him toward a destiny he had never imagined. Somewhere ahead lay a planet he had never seen, a wedding ceremony that terrified him, and a conspiracy that threatened to destroy the most powerful empire in the galaxy. But for the first time since this all began, Tae-ho felt something other than fear. He felt purpose. Valora Prime was the most beautiful thing Tae-ho had ever seen. As the eternal bloom descended through the atmosphere, he pressed his face against the viewing window like a child. The capital city of Astraville rose from the planet's surface like a mountain of crystal and light. Towers stretched impossibly high, connected by bridges that seemed to float without support. Everything gleamed with the same soft blue glow he had seen on Valorian skin, but beauty could hide danger. Tae-ho knew that now. The landing ceremony was overwhelming. Thousands of Valorians gathered to see their queen return with her strange human consort. Tae-ho could feel their emotions, even without Valorian telepathy. Curiosity, skepticism, and from some quarters, open hostility. The palace was even more impressive than the city. It was carved from a single enormous crystal, with rooms and corridors that seemed to grow organically from the structure itself. Servants rushed everywhere, preparing for the bonding ceremony that would take place in 3 days. 3 days for Tae-ho to prove he was worthy of their queen. Within hours of arriving, he was summoned to meet the High Council. Lyrie accompanied him, her presence a small comfort in the intimidating chamber where the council met. 5 figures sat on elevated platforms, representing the 5 great noble houses of Valora. Lord Kairos of House Thanir spoke first. He was tall, even for a Valorian, with silver markings on his skin that indicated great age and status. "Queen Lyrie, this bonding is unprecedented. A human? This weakens our empire in the eyes of all who observe us." "The bonding is legitimate under our oldest laws," Lyrie replied calmly. Tae-ho performed the ritual correctly. "I accepted. There is nothing more to discuss." "There is much to discuss," said Lady Vess of House Mortain. She was smaller than Kairos, but radiated cold intelligence. "If you insist on this bonding, the human must pass the trials of worth. We cannot have a consort who is unfit for the position." Tae-ho had heard about these trials from Theen. They were ancient tests designed to prove that a potential consort possessed the wisdom, courage, and loyalty required to stand beside the ruler. The problem was that they had been designed for Valorians, not humans. "The trials are acceptable," Lyrie said. "Tae-Ho will pass them." She sounded confident, but when they left the council chamber, Tae-Ho grabbed her arm. "You know, I might not be able to pass those trials. They're designed for your people, not mine. Then you will find human ways to pass them," Lyrie said. "That is why I chose you." That evening, a ship arrived from Earth. To Tae-Ho's surprise and relief, his friend Jisoo stepped off the vessel. Along with his sister Myrae, Jisoo was a fellow diplomat, sharp and resourceful. Myrae was a xenobiologist, one of Earth's leading experts on alien species. "We're here as your seconds," Jisoo explained, hugging Tae-Ho tightly. "Earth sent us to support you through the trials. Also, I brought some intelligence that you need to hear." They met in private, in a secure room that Lyrie had arranged. Jisoo pulled out a data device and activated a holographic display. Earth's intelligence services have been investigating. They've picked up communications suggesting that the conspiracy against Queen Lyrie involves more than just Valorians. There's an outside faction involved. "Who?" Tae-Ho asked. "We're not sure yet, but the pattern suggests organized crime. Possibly the Krill Syndicate. They're a criminal organization that operates across multiple systems." Myrae added, "The Krill would benefit from chaos in the Valorian Empire. If Lyrie is killed and the succession is disputed, it would create opportunities for them to expand their operations." This was worse than Tae-Ho had thought. The conspiracy wasn't just internal politics. It involved galactic criminals who had no loyalty to anyone. The first trial began the next morning. It was called the Labyrinth of Memory, a vast maze filled with telepathic illusions. The Valorians used it to test wisdom and mental strength. A candidate had to navigate the maze while resisting illusions designed to confuse and mislead. Tae-Ho stood at the entrance, with hundreds of Valorians watching from observation platforms above. Lyrie gave him an encouraging look, but he could see the worry in her eyes. If he failed, it would humiliate her and give her enemies ammunition to use against her. He stepped into the maze. Immediately, the walls began to shimmer and shift. Images appeared around him, showing events from his life. He saw his childhood home, his parents, his first day at university. The images were so real that he could smell the flowers from his mother's garden. But Tae-Ho remembered what Thene had told him. Valorians were telepathic. These illusions worked by reading emotions and memories from the candidate's mind. But human brains were structured differently. The illusions might not work the same way. He focused on the physical reality of the maze rather than the images. He touched the walls, finding they were solid despite their shimmering appearance. He ignored the emotional pull of the illusions and concentrated on the actual structure of the labyrinth. It took him 3 hours, but he found his way out. When he emerged, the watching Valorians seemed shocked. Lord Kairos looked particularly displeased. "He should not have been able to resist the illusions so easily," Kairos muttered. Lyrie smiled. "My consort has a strong mind." The second trial was physical. It was called the Trial of Strength, and it involved moving a massive stone from one platform to another. The stone was designed to test Valorian physical capabilities, which were naturally greater than human strength. Tae-Ho looked at the stone. There was no way he could lift it through pure strength. But strength wasn't just about muscles. It was also about leverage, about understanding physics and using the environment. He asked for permission to examine the platforms and the stone. Then he requested some simple tools that were available in the trial chamber. Using rope, a metal rod, and careful positioning, he created a lever system. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. He moved the stone using mechanical advantage, rather than raw power. Had they planned, we can prepare our own trap. You want to use the ceremony as bait, Jisoo said, understanding. Let them make their move, and catch them in the act. Exactly, Lyrie confirmed. But it will be dangerous. Tehe, if you want to withdraw, I will understand. Taeho thought about everything that had happened since that accidental proposal. He thought about Thien and the other Valorians who had shown him kindness. He thought about Lyrie herself, carrying the weight of an empire on her shoulders while assassins plotted against her. I'm not withdrawing, he said firmly. We finish this together. Lyrie reached out and took his hand. For the first time, the gesture felt natural, like they were truly partners rather than strangers bound by accident. The bonding ceremony was scheduled for the next day. They had one night to prepare, one chance to turn the conspirators' plan against them. As Taeho tried to sleep, he wondered if he would survive to see another sunrise, but he also knew that he had made his choice. Whatever happened in that temple, he would face it standing beside Lyrie, just as a true consort should. The Temple of Eternal Stars was breathtaking. It stood at the highest point of Estraville, a structure so old that even the Valorians weren't sure who had built it originally. The walls were transparent crystal that seemed to hold actual starlight within them. During bonding ceremonies, the temple would fill with light from thousands of captured stars, creating the illusion of standing in space itself. Tae-Sho stood in a preparation chamber, wearing ceremonial robes that felt nothing like his usual clothes. They were light as air, but seemed to shimmer with the same quality as Lyrie's skin. Jisoo helped him adjust them, while Myray checked the small communication device hidden in the fabric. Security forces are positioned, Jisoo whispered, but they're staying hidden, just like Lyrie ordered. If Kel suspects we know about the plot, he might call it off and wait for another opportunity. Or he might accelerate the attack, Myray added nervously. This is incredibly dangerous. Tae-Ho knew that. His heart was pounding so hard, he thought everyone in the room could probably hear it. But there was no turning back now. They had to catch the conspirators in the act, with proof that couldn't be denied. Through the doorway, he could see the temple filling with guests. Thousands of Valorians from across the Empire had come to witness this historic bonding. Representatives from other alien species were present too, curious to see humanity's first formal integration into galactic nobility. Ambassador Choi was there, looking anxious and proud at the same time. A servant appeared at the door. It is time. Tae-Ho walked into the temple on shaking legs. The light from the captured stars washed over him, and for a moment he forgot his fear. It truly felt like standing among the stars themselves. The guests fell silent as he made his way to the central platform. Then Lyrie appeared, and Tae-Ho forgot how to breathe. She wore robes that seemed to be made from pure starlight. Her skin glowed brighter than he had ever seen it, and her eyes held the same captured starlight as the temple walls. She was every bit a queen, powerful and beautiful, and utterly beyond anything he had imagined when he nervously approached her with that crystal flower. But when she reached the platform and took his hand, she smiled at him with genuine warmth. Whatever else this bonding was, they had become real partners. They trusted each other, and that trust was about to be tested. The ceremony began with ancient words in a Valorian, dialect so old that even most Valorians needed translation. The high priest called upon the stars to witness the bonding, to bind two souls across the gulf of space and species. It would have been beautiful if Tae-Ho wasn't waiting for an attack at any moment. He scanned the crowd carefully, looking for signs of the conspiracy. Lord Cairo stood among the council members, his face an unreadable mask. Vice Admiral Kell was positioned near the temple entrance with other security personnel. Everything seemed normal. The ceremony reached its midpoint. The high priest began the ritual of exchange, where the bonding partners would share breath, blood, and vow. This was the most sacred moment, when Valorian tradition said their souls would truly become one. That's when it happened. Explosions rocked the temple. Not near the central platform where Tae-ho and Lyrie St. Eude, but around the edges, where the council members sat. Tae-ho realized with horror that the attack wasn't targeting Lyrie at all. The conspirators were trying to kill the council first, eliminate all the witnesses and rivals before going after the queen. Chaos erupted. Guests screamed and rushed for the exits. Security forces tried to respond, but more explosions created barriers of fire and debris. Through the smoke and confusion, Tae-ho saw figures moving with deadly purpose. Assassins, wearing armor that helped them blend with the shadows, were advancing on the council members. Commander Sairei appeared from nowhere, her weapon drawn. She fired at the assassins, creating a shield around Queen Lyrie. "Your Majesty, we must evacuate." But Lyrie stood firm. "No, we end this today." One of the assassins broke through and lunged toward Lady Vess. The counselor tried to flee, but she was old and not built for combat. Tae-ho didn't think. He just moved. He tackled Lady Vess out of the way, and the assassin's energy blade sliced through the space where she had been standing. The assassin turned toward Tae-ho, raising the weapon for a killing blow. But Jisoo was there, having anticipated this exact scenario. She fired a human plasma pistol, something the Valorian shields weren't designed to stop. The assassin fell. "Their shields don't stop our weapons," Jisoo shouted. "The frequencies are different." My Ray was already on her communication device, calling the hidden security forces. "All units, use the human weapons we provided. Valorian shields can't block them." This changed everything. The assassins had been counting on their advanced shields to protect them from Valorian weapons. They hadn't considered that Earth might have different technology. Within moments, the tide of battle began to shift, but Tae-ho saw Lord Kairos moving through the chaos. The counselor wasn't fleeing. He was heading toward a specific section of the temple, where ancient controls were built into the walls. Tae-ho remembered the intelligence they had gathered. The conspirators had mentioned a gravity bomb. "Lyrie," he shouted over the noise. "Kairos is going for the bomb." They ran together, pushing through the panicked crowd. Kairos saw them coming and smiled coldly. He activated a device on his wrist, and suddenly the air around them became heavy. Gravity increased tenfold, pressing everyone to the floor. "This temple will collapse," Kairos announced, his voice amplified somehow through the chaos. "And you will all die in the rubble. The Valorian Empire will be reborn under new leadership, free from the weakness of those who would bond with primitive species." Tae-ho struggled against the crushing gravity. His human body Kel appeared then, confirming his betrayal. The Vice Admiral stood beside Kairos, seemingly unaffected by the gravity field. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but you left us no choice. The Empire needs strength, not sentiment." "You call this strength?" Lyrie gasped. "Murdering your own people? Allying with criminals? Do. When the Krill betray you? When they decide Velora is worth more as a conquest than an ally?" For just a moment, doubt flickered across Kairos's face. That moment was all Jisoo needed. The temple crystal suddenly blazed with light. Energy feedback surged through the ancient structure, and the gravity field collapsed. Tae-ho gasped as normal weight returned. Lyrie was already moving, faster than he could follow. She reached Kairos before he could react, disarming him with a move that spoke of combat training Tae-ho had never suspected. Kel tried to intervene, but Commander Sairei was there, her weapon aimed at the traitor. "It's over, Kel," Sairei said sadly. "Stand down." But Kel wasn't done. He grabbed a weapon and pointed it at Tae-ho. "If I cannot have victory, I will have revenge. The human dies. Time seemed to slow down. Tahoe saw Kel's finger tightening on the trigger. He saw Lyrie turning, too far away to help. He saw the weapon's energy building dot. Then Thien appeared, throwing himself between Kel and Tahoe. The energy blast caught the young Valorian in the chest, and he fell. Kel stared in horror at what he had done. In that moment of distraction, Sci-Ray fired. The Vice Admiral collapsed. Tahoe rushed to Thien's side. The young aide was badly wounded, but alive. Why? Tahoe asked, pressing his hands against the injury. Lay burdens with grace. Someone who had chosen to trust him when she had every reason not to. Let's finish this, he said, taking her hand. The high priest completed the ceremony in the traditional way, without the elaborate rituals that had been interrupted. Just the essential words and the joining of hands. When it was done, Tahoe and Lyrie stood bonded before the law and the stars. The guests who remained cheered, though the celebration was muted by the recent violence. Ambassador Choi approached with tears in his eyes. You did it. You actually did it. Earth's first official bond with an alien species. But this was bigger than Earth or Velora. As news of the conspiracy spread, the entire galactic community reacted with shock. The Krill Syndicate's involvement was exposed, their operations disrupted across multiple systems. Other alien species began to see humans differently, not as primitive newcomers, but as people who had stood beside the Valorian Queen in her darkest hour. That evening, as the sun set over Estraville, Tahoe and Lyrie stood together on a palace balcony. They were officially bonded now, partners in every legal sense. The ceremony was complete. What happens now? Tahoe asked. Lyrie looked out at her city, her empire, the stars beyond. Now we rule, Toj ended partner and looked at the stars. One accidental proposal had changed everything. 6 months had passed since the bonding ceremony. Tahoe stood in his office on Velora Prime, looking at reports from across the galaxy, and marveled at how much had changed. He was no longer just Tahoe Kim, the translator who made a mistake. He was Prince Consort of the Valorian Empire, and somehow he had grown into the role. The office itself was a compromise between human and Valorian design. Half the walls displayed holographic star maps in the Valorian style, while the other half had simple screens showing data the way humans preferred to see it. His desk held artifacts from both worlds, symbols of the partnership he and Lyrie had built. His sister Myrae entered without knocking, which was typical for her. She had become the official liaison between Earth's scientific community and Valorian researchers. You need to see this, she said, activating a holographic display. We've been monitoring precursor sites across the galaxy, like you asked. In the past week, 17 of them have suddenly activated. Tahoe leaned forward, studying the data. The precursors were an ancient sea. We don't know, Myrae admitted. But the timing is suspicious. It started 3 days after your bonding ceremony was publicly broadcast across the galaxy. Before Tahoe could respond, Lyrie entered the office. She had changed, too. I was just about to. Lyrie activated another display, showing ancient Valorian text alongside. I think it's too specific to be coincidence, Lyrie said. The precursors left a message alert interrupted them. It was from Hannah Park, who now served as Earth's ambassador to Velora. Her face appeared on the screen, and she looked worried. We've just received a transmission from the Krill Syndicate. They're demanding an immediate meeting. They say it concerns the precursor activations and the future of the entire galaxy. They want to negotiate? Tahoe said skeptically. The Krill don't negotiate. They threaten and steal. They sound scared, Hannah said. That worries me more than their usual aggression. The meeting took place aboard a neutral station, similar to where Tahoe had first accidentally proposed to Lyrie. But this time, the stakes were different. The Krill delegation was led by Overlord Vrath, a massive being with 4 arms and cybernetic enhancements that made him look more machine than organic. "The precursor sites are awakening," Vrath said without preamble. "This threatens all of us. Your bonding ceremony was broadcast across known space. The precursor systems detected it and activated. You have unleashed something that should have remained sleeping. What exactly have we unleashed?" Lyrie demanded. Vrath hesitated, which was unusual for a Krill overlord. "We have studied the precursors for centuries, seeking their technology. We learned that they created a defensive system, an artificial intelligence designed to monitor the galaxy. Its purpose was to prevent any single species from achieving total dominance." Tae-Ho began to understand. "And it's been dormant all this time, waiting for some trigger?" "The trigger was cooperation," Vrath said. "The precursors believed that true civilization required different species working together. When you, a human, bonded with the Valorian Queen, it demonstrated unprecedented cooperation between species. The system recognized this as a sign that the galaxy was ready." "Ready for what?" Myray asked. "To be judged," Vrath replied grimly. "The precursor AI will evaluate all major civilizations. Those that demonstrate cooperation and peaceful coexistence will be given access to precursor technology. Those that fail will face correction." The word correction hung in the air with ominous weight. Jisoo, who had come as part of Earth's delegation, spoke up. "What does correction mean?" "We don't know exactly," Vrath admitted. "But precursor records suggest it involves forced limitation of a species' expansion capabilities. They could make it impossible for a hostile civilization to spread beyond their current territory. For the Krill Syndicate, which depended on expansion and conquest, this was an existential threat. Tae-Ho understood now why they had tried so hard to stop the bonding between him and Lyrie. They had known about the prophecy and feared what it might unleash. "The precursor homeworld," Lyrie said. "Nexus Prime. If we want answers, we need to go there." Vrath nodded. "We have the coordinates. The Syndicate has been searching for Nexus Prime for generations. We finally located it 5 years ago, but we could never penetrate its defenses. Now those defenses are lowering, allowing access." "Why tell us this?" Toe asked suspiciously. "Why help us?" "Because if humanity and Valor reach Nexus Prime first, you might be able to influence the AIS judgment," Vrath said. "You represent cooperation. We represent conquest. The AI will likely favor your approach. If we work together now, perhaps we can all survive what comes next." It was a strange alliance. Humans, Valorians, and Krill traveling together to the lost homeworld of the precursors. The ship they took was a Valorian vessel, the Eternal Bloom once again carrying Tae-Ho into unknown territory. The journey to Nexus Prime took 3 weeks. During that time, Tae-Ho got to know the Krill better. They were not as simple as he had thought. Yes, they valued strength and conquest, but they also had a culture, a history. Vrath himself had risen from nothing to lead the Syndicate through intelligence and strategy. "Your species fascinates us," Vrath told Tae-Ho one evening. "You nearly destroyed yourselves, yet you recovered. You had every reason to give up, but you adapted instead. That resilience is why the precursor system recognized you." Nexus Prime appeared on the view screens like a legend made real. It was a world of impossible structures, cities that stretch from the surface into orbit, connected by towers of material that shouldn't exist according to known physics. Even abandoned for thousands of years, it radiated technological sophistication beyond anything the current galaxy had achieved. The landing was smooth. Whatever defenses had once protected this world were indeed standing down, allowing them to approach. Tae-Ho, Lyrie, Vrath, and a small team of scientists and soldiers ventured into the largest structure. a tower that seemed to touch the planet's upper atmosphere. Inside, they found the AI dot. It was nothing like they expected. Not a computer or a robot, but something woven into the very fabric of the structure. Lights flowed through the walls like thoughts, and when it spoke, the voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Welcome, inheritors," the AI said. "I am the legacy of the precursors. I have waited a long time for this moment." "You're judging us," Larry said. "Determining if we're worthy of precursor technology." "Not just worthy," the AI corrected. "Capable." The precursors learned through bitter experience that advanced technology given to unprepared civilizations leads to destruction. They nearly destroyed themselves before they understood the importance of cooperation. The AI showed them visions, holographic histories of the precursors. They had been brilliant but fractured, divided into warring factions. Their technology had grown faster than their wisdom. They had almost rendered their entire species extinct before they learned to work together. When they finally achieved unity, the AI continued, they created me. My purpose is to ensure that other species learn the same lesson before they acquire power that could destroy the galaxy. "And the correction?" Tahoe asked. "What happens to species that fail your test?" "They are limited," the AI said simply. "Their faster-than-light travel is disabled. Their weapons are neutralized. They are confined to their current territory until they learn cooperation. Some species remain confined for centuries. Others never learn." Vroth stepped forward. "The Krill Syndicate has built an empire on strength. We will not submit to limitation." "Then you will fail," the AI replied. "Unless you can demonstrate that your species is capable of cooperation and peaceful coexistence." This was the moment everything had been building toward. The AI was offering a choice, but also a test. Could the Krill change? Could humanity and Valora help them change? Tahoe looked at Lyrie, and he saw the same thought in her eyes. They had started this journey with an accidental proposal, but they had built something real from that mistake. A partnership based on trust and mutual respect. If they could do it, maybe others could too. "We'll work together," Tahoe said. "Humans, Valorians, and Krill will form a galactic cooperative, a framework for species to resolve conflicts peacefully. You would trust the Krill after they tried to kill you?" The AI asked. "Trust has to start somewhere," Lyrie said. "The precursors learned that. We can learn it too." Vroth was silent for a long moment. Then he extended one of his forearms toward Tahoe. "A partnership. The Krill Syndicate will join this cooperative. But we will not give up our strength." "We don't ask you to," Tahoe said, grasping Vroth's arm. "We ask you to use that strength to protect rather than conquer." The AI seemed to consider this. Lights flowed faster through the walls, calculations being performed at incomprehensible speeds. Finally, it spoke again. "You have demonstrated the first principle of cooperation, the willingness to extend trust even when it is risky. Very well. The precursor legacy is yours to inherit. Technology will be released gradually, matched to your ability to use it responsibly. But know this, I will continue to monitor. If the galaxy falls back into destructive patterns, the correction will come." With that, the AI transferred knowledge directly into their minds. Not all precursor technology, but enough to make a difference. Medical advances that could cure diseases across multiple species. Energy generation that was clean and nearly limitless. Manufacturing techniques that could end scarcity. The knowledge was overwhelming, but also exciting. This was what the galaxy could become if species worked together instead of fighting. They returned to civilization as heroes. News of the galactic cooperative spread rapidly. Other species, inspired by the partnership between humans, Valorians, and even the Krill, began to join. Within months, It included dozens of civilizations. 1 year after the bonding ceremony, Tu-Ho stood with Lyri on Earth, visiting his family. His parents had been overwhelmed when he first brought Lyri home, but they had welcomed her warmly. Myray had spent hours showing Lyri embarrassing childhood photos of Te-Ho-Dot. Now they stood on a beach, watching the sunset over the ocean. Lyri placed Te-Ho's hand on her abdomen, where a new life was growing. The first child born of two species, human and Valorian combined. What will we tell them? Lyri asked. When they're old enough to understand how all this began? Tu-Ho smiled. We'll tell them the truth. That their father made a mistake, tried to give a gift of respect, and accidentally proposed marriage to an alien queen. That their mother was crazy enough to accept. And that, from that one mistake, something beautiful grew. Not just beautiful, Lyri said. Something that changed the galaxy. She was right. The Galactic Cooperative was growing stronger every day. The precursor technology was being shared and studied. Species that had been enemies for centuries were learning to work together. All because of one accidental proposal. Te-Ho looked up at the stars, knowing that up there, the legacy AI was watching, monitoring, making sure that the lessons of cooperation weren't forgotten. The precursors had given the galaxy a gift, but also a responsibility. Humanity had stumbled into this new era, just as they had stumbled through so much of their history. But they had also shown what was possible when different minds worked together. When mistakes became opportunities, when trust overcame fear. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Te-Ho pulled Lyri close. They were partners now in every sense, bonded by accident, united by choice, and facing the future together. The mystery that had been unleashed wasn't a threat. It was a promise that cooperation could triumph over conflict, that different species could build something better together than they ever could alone. And it had all started with one nervous human, one crystal flower, and one accidental proposal to an alien queen. The stars watched from above, and the legacy AI recorded it all, noting that perhaps humanity's greatest strength was this. They turned mistakes into miracles, chaos into opportunity, and accidents into destiny. The story was just beginning.